Welcome to the Sargassum podcast, where we learn about the latest ideas and concepts about sargassum. This podcast is funded by the Resilience, Sustainable Energy and Marine Biodiversity Program, RESMBIT. It's financed under the 11th European Development Fund, EDF, Caribbean Overseas Countries and Territories Regional Program. RESMBIT is being implemented by expertise grants, with primary stakeholders being the 12 Caribbean overseas countries. Let's get ready to learn together. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sargassum podcast. It's Evelyn and me today, and we are going to talk to Gennike Mayers from Trinidad and Tobago about her new product, which is called Spargassum, which is cosmetics made out of sargassum. And we chose this guest because when Evelyn and I were holding the Sargassum Champions course with over 20 people from the overseas Caribbean territories, a lot of them were very interested in cosmetica. I know Arenthia from Turks and Caicos, she really wanted to look into cosmetica because there's so many people making cosmetica in the Turks and Caicos and selling it to tourists. And also our participants from Curacao were really highlighting that making products or finding products that can be sold to tourists has a good chance to actually work. So we thought, let's give them some more information about cosmetica and about somebody who has actually been able to do so. And we invited Gennike after she got in touch with us, telling us about her product and her Sargassum cosmetic line. Evelyn, how are you doing?
Hello, Fran. Hello, Gennike. I am fine, actually. Here is a cloudy day today in Cancun, and I am very happy to be back in the Sargassum podcast since I think some months, and I am expecting to learn how can we use Sargassum as a cosmetic product because I don't know how.
Yes.
So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and you've been very busy this summer with Spanish episodes with the podcast as well, right?
Yes, we will have some Spanish episodes coming soon, and we hope everyone likes them also, our Spanish speakers countries, and also the English version. You can find it with the subtitles, so you can read subtitles if you want to hear some Spanish and practice your your Spanish as well.
Yes, and those subtitles you can find on YouTube. So whenever you see a podcast in a language that you don't speak yourself or don't understand yourself, you can always go to YouTube and put on the subtitles in your own language and listen to it.
Yes, we make a great effort to do that
Yes, it's
also.
several hours of work checking the subtitles and making sure that
Yes,
the translations will be done well.
yeah, yeah. I'm happy to see you, Fran, also.
Yes, I'm in Switzerland right now visiting my family.
You are freezing?
It's okay. It's raining here as well. So it's not that cold yet. It's still fall. Yeah.
Okay.
But let me
You,
introduce our guest. Gennike Mayers is the interpreter in chief at Interpreting Your Needs, which provides multilingual communication services. She used to work as a communicator for the UNOPS and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. In summer 2022, she founded Geli Pedi Ltd together with a friend, and a year later, they launched a line of Sargassum spa products. Welcome to the podcast, Gennike.
Thank you. So good to be here, Francisca and Evelyn. Lovely listening to your little chit chat at the start.
yes. Well, we have a first question for you, and it is, what is sargassum for you?
For me, Sargassum embodies waste to wealth. I live in the Southern Caribbean on the island of Tobago, and we've been seeing Sargassum washing up here seasonally, as you know, but generally months of May, June, and tourism being um, one of the key motors of the economy here. It's been a real challenge, just as elsewhere in the Caribbean, and so it's still regarded as a waste and quite a nuisance in Tobago. But thanks to another lens that I have as an interpreter, I've been able to see that waste and think of it as a pathway to wealth in terms of transforming the sargassum into something that can be used.
That is very interesting, and it's funny that that your work as interpreter actually showed you what can be done with sargassum. You live on Tobago, right?
Correct.
How is Tobago impacted by sargassum?
So we've been seeing, these floating rafts of sargassum since about 2015. Um, and as I said, it's at some times of the year, it covers the entire shoreline. I live on the eastern coast, which is the Atlantic coastline. And so that is where the sargassum arrives first before it penetrates into areas on the Caribbean seaside. And so from where I live, I could literally see the sargassum floating in and then washing up on the shore. It has impacted the tourism sector, though. So Tobago is part of the twin island republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad being more commercial and industrial, but Tobago very, very much anchored in tourism. And so, like most of the other Caribbean islands that depend on, the pristine waters and that sort of postcard perfect images of sandy shorelines, Tobago has been impacted, and Tobago's tourism has been impacted by the sheer volume of sargassum that has been washing up. And so, the local government has had to invest a lot of resources to remove sargassum from the shoreline to ensure that the beaches are beautiful and available to tourists and residents alike. So that has been one of the major impacts of sargassum. And again, this is no different to any of the other Caribbean islands that have been impacted in the tourism sector mainly.
Genique, and how, well, I know they are cosmetics, but how is sargassum beneficial to these kind of products for the health and the beauty?
Great, thanks for that, Evelyn. So I should probably answer by saying that I'm aware of its benefits, thanks um, mainly to the conferences that I've worked in as an interpreter. Um, I have interpreted for a series of webinars specifically on sargassum that were funded by the Mexican government. I know you're based in Mexico, Evelyn. And so it's thanks to the research coming out mainly from Mexico, Mexican researchers, that I was exposed to this knowledge about sargassum. And so according to the scientists, because I'm not a scientist, but according to the scientists, sargassum has both nutritional and medicinal properties, including the fact that it's antifungal, it's antibacterial, antioxidant, meaning that it can help to slow down the aging process. It also has a high iodine content, so even in terms of the nutritional value, being able to eat sargassum, as I do personally, that's not a commercial product, but so it does have those benefits that have been proven by mainly Mexican scientists who started their research since 2011. So we're today benefiting from over 10 years of research that has recently been made available publicly. And that's how I was able to access this body of knowledge about sargassum and started doing my own experiments at home to see, what could I do with this sargassum that's washing up at the beach just 5 minutes walk from my home. I see it every day when it's voluminous, and I just always looked at it to think, okay, there must be something that can be done. And thanks to that research that's been shared through scientific conferences, um, I have been able to extract some of that knowledge, some of the techniques, and apply it at home, which gave birth to Spargassum, this line of cosmetics that I created with my girlfriend and business partner, who herself has been making cosmetics for about 12 years now. So it really is a team effort how we got to Spargassum today, and that we're able to make these nutritional and medicinal properties of the sargassum available to our customers.
You're, I think, our first guest that has said they're eating sargassum. I have tried it before. I knew there was arsenic and heavy metals in sargassum. It doesn't taste bad. But don't you feel a bit worried about putting too many heavy metals in your body by eating it without testing it beforehand?
So it's interesting you raise that point, and it's something that I often get as a question, right? The thing is, a lot of the research available would have been based on samples coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. And again, I am not a scientist, but I am just applying common sense and logic. And to my mind, the profile of the Gulf of Mexico is going to be very different to the profile of the water that we have down in the southern Caribbean. Of course, in Mexico, you have a lot of oil and gas exploration, and I would imagine the pollution levels in the water could certainly be attributed to higher levels of heavy metal. As far as the southern Caribbean goes, again, this is just common sense to me. I feel fairly safe to consume the sargassum that we get in the southern Caribbean, and I would hasten to say that I do harvest the sargassum at sea, so it's not yet washed up on the shore where it's mixed with sand or other land-based pollutants. That being said, specifically with regard to Spargassum, our line of cosmetics, we have gone through the lab testing. We've used the University of the West Indies lab out in Mona, Jamaica, and they have certified our samples as being within the um, normal realm, normal rates of allowed uh, trace metals, and way under actually. So that certainly reassures me that in terms of external use, it is good. And for me personally, I have been experimenting with the sargassum in brownies, in lasagna. I've mixed it into pizza dough because I remember in one of the presentations from Mexican researchers, they had mentioned making crackers and pizza with the sargassum. So I've tried that at home as well. And yes, I feel safe to eat it. I've been eating this since about 2019. Um, I'm still here. I'm still very healthy. It's not a commercial product that I would put out there on the market, but for my own personal consumption, yeah, I do feel quite comfortable eating sargassum. And I would add, I have a few vegan friends here in Tobago who also eat sargassum just raw. Literally, just put some olive oil on it like a salad, and they eat it raw. So if there are heavy metals in there, well, there's going to be heavy metals in us. But we're used to eating fish out here, right? Fish is one of our staple. We eat fresh fish, and when you think of what could be in the body of a fish, the fish could have mercury or other trace metals as well. But we eat the fish, and we don't stop to question whether the fish is going to poison us or not. So I feel fairly safe eating it.
Yes, and actually, when we interviewed somebody about arsenic and heavy metals, we learned that often rice that you buy or apples that you buy or fish as well has very high arsenic levels, and there's no real regulations or enforcement about not having arsenic in our diet. So definitely, if people are very concerned about eating arsenic, there's a lot more things they shouldn't be eating than just sargassum.
Agreed. And,
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear.
I think unless you're growing your own food and
Go
you
ahead.
know the history of the soil where you're growing your food, you really don't know what you're putting into your body, right? Because you go to the market, you trust the vendor, you don't know what pesticides they're using on the vegetables. And I'll be cynical to go as far as saying even those who say that they're organic, unless you go visit their farm and see what they're actually using, you just have to trust people. You don't know for sure what's going into your vegetables that you're buying. So I will treat with seafood in the same manner. We don't know all that's in the ocean and all that's in the fish or whatever seafood, whether it's sargassum or otherwise, that we choose to eat. So I think it's all things in moderation is probably the motto of the day.
I wanted to ask to Yannick, what does it takes? How what does it taste like, the sargassum, when you eat it?
You know what? For me, it just tastes like seafood. it has a it has a sort of salty taste. Um, though I wash it out. So I'll tell you, I harvest it at sea. I go out into the water, like waist high, and I harvest at sea. And I have a rainwater collection system at home. So I wash it out in rainwater as opposed to the pipe-borne water, which has a heavy concentration of chloride. And so I wash it very carefully before consuming. And to me, it just has a light sort of seafood flavor, especially when I mix it into the pizza dough. It tastes like a seafood pizza. You can throw some salmon or anchovies on top of that with olives, and it just tastes like seafood to me.
Yeah, one of my students said it tastes like salty arugula.
Ah, that's an interesting description. Yeah, maybe. Why not? Why not? Of course, the arugula leaves are much bigger. So for the sargassum, what I do is I clip off just the leaves. I don't eat the stem of it, so I just clip off the leaves, which are very dainty, very small, and that is what I mix into whether it's the brownies or actually the brownies with the sargassum have it tastes like a salted caramel brownie. I think just because of the salt, the iodine content, but it's quite pleasant. It's quite pleasant. So I'll continue to eat it. And again, I'm not proning or preaching to anybody to go eat sargassum, but for me, it is part of my diet, and I do enjoy prepping it and experimenting with it.
That sounds really interesting. To get back to Spargassum, you already told us a little bit how it was formed. Is there anything else you want to tell us? How did you get the idea for Spargassum or how it started?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I had been observing sargassum, and I had access to the research that this nuisance could actually be useful. And so with my girlfriend Donalisa Phillips, she has been making her own line of cosmetics in Trinidad and Tobago for about 12 years. And so I started to experiment with the sargassum based on the knowledge that I had acquired. And so she started experimenting, and we were using it just between ourselves because we didn't want to put it out there. Next thing you know, somebody gets an allergic reaction or something. So we'd been using it just between ourselves in a body oil and a soap form. And what happened was shortly thereafter, the Inter-American Development Bank had an ideas competition, what they call the Tobago Blue Economy Ideas Competition. And at that time we said, oh, but let's pitch our idea. It was still very much sort of kitchen experiments at the time. And so we pitched the idea of Spargassum is a name that I came up with because it combines the spa products with sargassum, and I just thought it sounded really nice. And so we pitched the idea of developing a line of sargassum based spa products or cosmetics. And we were among six six persons or six entities selected by the IDB for grant funding. And so with that grant funding, we were able to take the experiment a little further and actually do formal formulations, testing with the lab, getting feedback from local technical experts in terms of product development, um, bringing products to market. The IDB has that expertise within their staff, and so we were able to benefit from all of that technical support just beyond the idea. Because everybody can wake up with a great idea, but how do you take something from the ideation to the creation stage? And so we were able to benefit from that thanks to the IDB. That process took about a year, just going from the idea to the actual product creation, product testing, developing labels that are aligned with our local regulations, and then finally bringing the product to market, which we did in August 2023. Just 2 months ago, we launched two products, which are I actually have the prototype bottle here. This is the original prototype, no label or nothing. I think it looks pretty. You can actually see the sargassum there. And so it's a body oil, and then we also have this soap bar. So this is the one that's fully dressed with a label, and you can actually see the sargassum there. So it's got sargassum granules in it, but this gives it an exfoliating effect. So these were the two products that we launched coming out of that grant from the IDB, and we're still experimenting. We're looking at facial scrubs, facial masks with the sargassum, but it's a long process to just launch a product, and so we're pursuing that, but we're very proud and happy to have been able to put out these two products. We're the first in Trinidad and Tobago to launch a sargassum based product of any kind. It so happens that this is in the realm of cosmetics, but we have now joined the ranks of other Caribbean islands like Barbados. There's a cosmetic line coming out of Barbados. We're aware of someone in St. Lucia that's doing organic fertilizers from the sargassum as well, out in Jamaica as well. So now Trinidad and Tobago can say that it has its own very first line of sargassum based products.
Jenny, could you tell us how do you process sargassum to the final product?
Sure. So, we've experimented with quite a few things. And again, based on the research coming out of Mexico, which pointed to different ways of harvesting sargassum, different ways of treating it, different ways of processing it. So we eventually came down to taking the sargassum. So I have a bit of it here. This is the dried sargassum. It looks very pretty, actually. It's very brittle. But this is essentially the sargassum that we harvest at sea. Again, we avoid harvesting it on the seashore because it's already mixed up with sand and other pollutants. So we want to get it as pure as possible. So we harvest at sea. We wash it thoroughly with rainwater, and that process basically takes away any residue of sand or the saltiness of the sea, of course, and that we put it to dry. Now our dryer is very artisanal. Again, coming back to the Mexican research, we have sort of little squares with chicken, what we call chicken wire, and we put the sargassum there and just expose it to the sun. There's no, I would say, no unnatural treatment of it. It's completely natural. It's dried by the sun. So this is rain washed, dried by the sun, and it gets to this pretty color. It gets quite brittle. I don't know if you can hear the sound. And we take this and then we grind this down in a blender, and then this is what we get. So I'll just show you. I have this as a sample bottle. Whenever I do displays with the public, I show people this is what it looks like ground. It almost looks like it could be coffee, actually. Let me see if I can get yeah. So the video. So it's just little granules of the
Yes,
sargassum.
coffee
I'm getting it on
sargassum.
my laptop. Right. So you see, it's very pretty, right? And it's
Yes.
like little grains, like powdered sargassum. And so this is what we incorporate into the soap bars. So within the soap bars, you have that sort of granulated finish, and then we do put some bigger, well, I call them sort of strands. You have bigger strands of the sargassum that you can see here. Can't really see the granules too much, but they're in there. So that's for the soap. With regard to the body oil, so we have a male and female body oil. Shameless plug. This is the female, this is the male one. Although I should say a lot of the women actually like the one that's male. It has a more of a unisex fragrance. But in there you'll notice the strands of sargassum are in there. So we use essential oils, olive oil, sunflower oil, vitamin E oil, sweet almond oil, and we also add in the little strands of sargassum because the oils extract the properties from the sargassum, and that has been shown in the lab testing. So we know that the properties of the sargassum do get into they penetrate the oil. Um, and so those are the two products that we have, and the processing, as I said, we're still very much an artisanal operation, cottage industry if you like. We are currently in talks with companies out in the US to scale up our production, um, and to be able to export our products. But for the time being, it's kitchen based and it's artisanal, and this is the magic ingredient, sargassum, turning waste into wealth.
Thank you so much for sharing with us how you make your product. We understand that a lot of people who start a business don't want to share too much because they don't want other people to copy them. But we are always interested. How is it made, and what actually goes in there, etc. So this was really interesting.
Well, there's a saying.
So a lot of our sargassum. Go ahead.
There's a saying that imitation is the best form of flattery. So we'd be flattered if people want to copy. But
Yes.
there are some secret ingredients in there, and the formulation, the recipe is still secret. But the process is quite easy, and I would like to encourage people actually to experiment with it. Experiment at home, outside of the cosmetics, and as I told you earlier, eating. I also use sargassum as mulch in my garden. I have about a lot of land, and I have all kinds of produce growing, and I found the sargassum, well, at least the one that washes up on the shore, that one I can harvest it, and I use that as a mulch in my garden. And it's very effective against some pests that we have here called batchaks. It's like a big ant that gnaws away at the leaves, and once the plants, the roots and the stem, the main trunk of the plants are surrounded by sargassum, the batchaks don't go anywhere near them. So it's also very useful in the garden. So I encourage people to experiment at home.
Yes, just be aware of the potential of the arsenic, especially when you put it in the garden or eat it. But as you said, depending on where you are, the risk for arsenic are higher or lower. We just don't have that much data yet.
Agreed. And that's something, as we spoke offline, that certainly needs more investigation in terms of the profile of the sargassum, the profile of where it's actually harvested, what are the properties of the sargassum based on where it's harvested, and what could be the uses of the sargassum depending on its geographic profile. So that's something I'm also keen to learn more about.
Yes, same here, because sargassum has so many good properties, and not using it if it is safe to use would be a waste, and really, yeah, would be sad if we just put it in a landfill and it could actually be used for our gardens or for other products. So when we did our Sargassum Champions course, a lot of our participants were quite keen on helping solve the sargassum problem on their island, and also experiment with, making different products. And you just told us that you got funding from the IDB lab, and you also are applying, you just applied for another grant from the FCDO, which is from the UK government. So how do you find these opportunities? Like, what kind of tips do you have for people who are looking for starting capital? Where do they have to start looking?
Thanks for that question, Francisca. Yeah, so part of it is, I would say I have a natural inclination as an interpreter for research. I'm not a scientist, but I am a researcher. So I'm always seeking out information. That's part of my usual preparation for conferences. Sometimes we get hired to do conferences that are highly technical. It could be in the medical field, could be in technology, banking, oil and gas, environmental. Uh, I am not a specialist in any of those areas. So once I'm hired as an interpreter, I have to do my due diligence. I have to do my research to find out more about the topic, prepare glossaries to be able to translate from one language to another any body of knowledge. And so that is part of my own training. And I think a byproduct of that training is just simply being on the lookout for information all the time, particularly information about things that I have no knowledge of. I have an insatiable quest for knowledge. I think I have yeah, very high quotient of intellectual curiosity. And so I'm always looking for information. And because I am actively looking, I find the information. And that's how I found the information about the IDB grant in the first instance. And that's also partially how I found out about the FCDO grant. So it's one thing looking for information, but also a key tip I would share is speak to people about the things that you're interested in. Speak to people about the things you love. I think everybody in my close circle knows how fascinated I am with sargassum, just as everybody in my business partner circle know how fascinated she is with cosmetics and anything to do with beauty. And so because we talk about our passion and we talk about it passionately, whenever other people see information about those things, they'll naturally send it to us. So that's actually what happened in this case. A friend of mine who's also a business associate, he knows me as the Sargassum lady because I'm always talking about Sargassum. And so when this grant came up about Sargassum research, he forwarded it to me immediately. He's like, Jen, that's for you, Sargassum lady. so that's a it's you know it's a silly thing, but talk about what you're passionate about. That way the people around you, they can be your antenna, they can be your eyes and your ears on the ground to share information that might not reach to you directly. They can be conduits for that information. And so that's often the case for me.
Oh, I like so much how you just explain that to us, because sometimes we forget to talk about the things that we are passionate, and we just assume that people might uh, get to see that we are passionate, but if we don't talk, people will not know. So there are people that cannot read minds, so people don't read minds usually. So I wanted to ask you, um, what kind of hurdle did you have to get the soaps and your products used in the major hotels, spas, and even your national airline?
Great, thanks for that, Evelyn. And so I should just specify we are still in negotiations. Um, I wouldn't think of it as hurdles. I think that this is just a natural process of engaging with entities that don't know you. I think it's a fairly common process in business, especially as a startup company. We've been around for just 1 year, and our product has been around for just 2 months. So part of it is having the confidence and boldness to reach out to established entities. Like we have reached out to some of the top hotels, the top spas in Trinidad and Tobago, and also the national airline, Caribbean Airlines, which is a Caribbean icon. And so I think it does take a bit of brazenness to reach out as a startup, but the thing is, we believe in our products. We have gone through the process of testing the research, we've launched it, and my business partner and I were both very passionate about what we do. And so I think that when we reached out to these entities, they feel our passion. Um, Whether the product is good or not, and we think our product is the best, but they certainly are enthused by our passion, and so that they are willing to listen to us. So we are still in talks, and we've had very favorable discussions so far. We're tweaking our products to their specific needs. For example, with one of the spas that we've been talking to for a month now, they wanted some very specific labeling, specific information, because of course they are basically going to have to vet or assure their clientele that, hey, this product is good for you. They're taking on a responsibility to recommend our product to their clients. So they want particular assurances. They want, a lot of background information about the ingredients. And that, I think, it's quite normal. I don't see that as a hurdle in any way. With regard to the national carrier, we are in discussion. They are in the process of revamping, for example, their duty-free shops and their online sales. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but we're hoping right now that we will be part of their revamp, and because we are an iconic brand, although we're just 2 months old. And so we're looking forward to that brand association with Caribbean Airlines, with that literally connects the Caribbean. They fly to almost every destination across the wider Caribbean region, and so having a product like Spargassum, which, sargassum is a Caribbean problem. It is a problem in all of the Caribbean islands. So to be able to promote a solution, a product that is a solution on board a Caribbean airline, I think that's is just fantastic. So no to hurdles. I wouldn't use the word hurdles. I would just say this is part of the growing process, as we grow as a business, as we grow our range of products, but also as we grow the relationships that we are nurturing. As I mentioned earlier with the spa, you have to build trust, and that typically comes over time. So we are doing our part to build that trust with the people we connect to, and I think that's also another point I want to just highlight. Companies are not these generic entities. Companies are people. It's, when you reach out to a company, you're speaking to a person, unless it's a bot that you're chatting with online. I don't know. But it's essentially a person reaching out to another person, or a group of people. That's what a company is. And so I've just always found it useful to treat with people like you want to be treated. And that's how I go about approaching people that I don't know. Introduce myself, let them know what I'm about, and keep it cordial, and try to communicate my passion for what I'm doing, so that they will give me a favorable air and at least want to hear me out. Whether they choose to say no or not afterward, that's fine. That's a decision. But so far, we've not had any closed doors. There's been no one who has said outright no. Um, so far, the persons that we've reached out to have been very open, very curious about what is this thing. It's sargassum. For a lot of persons, actually, they would have their only encounter with sargassum would have been a negative encounter at the beach. Like, you go into the water, you want to swim, and you have these, icky sargassum sticking on you. So a lot of people have that negative idea of what sargassum is. So when we show them, well, hey, you can actually make a product that has properties that are great for your skin or great for your hair, they're immediately very curious to know, oh, well, how did you do that? And that's how we open up the conversation.
That is really cool. And yeah, you didn't say it, but it very much sounded out of it, the there's nothing you can lose by talking to other businesses and see if they are interested, because yeah, there's nothing, like if they say no, it's the same as if you don't ask them. And my mom always told me, when she was doing a pasta business, so selling freshly made pasta to people together with her friend, she's like, if you have a product that you know is good and that you can stand behind, you shouldn't have a problem talking to people about it, and asking people if they want to sell it in their restaurants, etc. And I think it's exactly what you also said, like you believe in your product, you know it's a good product, and you can stand for it. And it's really important that people who are making products are proud of it and show it. And yeah, you should, everybody who is making a Sargassum product and has gone through all the testing should be proud that they did it, because it's not that easy. So for our last question, there's still not that many women who have their own business. There's always, I think there's a saying that there's more CEOs called John than there are women CEOs out in the world. So do you have any tips for women who want to start their own business?
Well, first of all, just start. I think that's the essential thing. Um, Whether women or men, although I think women probably suffer from this condition a bit more than men in terms of second guessing ourselves and questioning whether we actually can. Um, Fortunately, my business partner, who's a girlfriend, Donalisa Phillips, and I, we've we've been through some things in life, and those lessons, those life lessons, have taught us um, sort of the hard way that you don't have anything unless you go after it. There are very few things that you can just sit down and will come to you in life. You have to go after what you want. Now, some people might think, or I have heard some people say, well, actually, you attract what you want. Um, yes, I think you can attract what you want in life, but if you don't go out there and get it yourself, it can come to you, and then it can keep on walking and pass you by. If I'm to use that illustration, so that would be my first tip. It is to go after what you want, and not be afraid to start. Often starting is the hardest part. I have a girlfriend who also has a business, and her tagline is the art of the start. Some people, many people, get stuck before they even start, because you're figuring out all these things in your head, and you're going after these sort of perfectionist tendencies, and you want to get everything absolutely perfectly right before you even start, and that can be a hurdle. Evelyn, earlier on you were asking me about the hurdle. That can be a hurdle
Yeah.
to getting anywhere, because you stop yourself from starting. So I would encourage women in particular to really just go after your dreams. I mean, experiment. We're still, like I said earlier, and I have no qualms in saying we're working out of our kitchens. My kitchen here in Tobago, my girlfriend is based in Trinidad. And actually, you know what? That works for us, because it literally is a product made in both islands. We harvest the sargassum here in Tobago, down the beach from where I live. I do the first processing, like I showed you earlier. I always hold up this little sample bottle. I do the first part of the processing. I send it down to my girlfriend in Trinidad, and she finishes off the product. So it's literally a product made in both islands. And for now, we're humbly doing it in out of our kitchens. Um, and we'll take the next stage when we're ready. We've got some grand dreams, but the fact of the matter is, right now, it's a home-based business, and there's nothing wrong with that. uh, that's another tip I want to share with women. There's nothing wrong with starting off small. If I'm to quote scripture, the Bible actually says, do not despise small beginnings. The Lord rejoices to see the work begin. So just get started. Stop trying to make everything perfect before you start, or waiting for the perfect circumstances, the perfect conditions. You must have all of this, you must have all of that before you start. No, just start, and you'll find the resources as you go along. You'll find the help as you go along. You'll find people who want to help you as you go along. And of course, as I said earlier, talk about what you're doing. I don't believe in this notion of hiding because you think people are going to steal your idea. Um, everybody can have a great idea, but there's so few people who actually act upon those ideas that in order for someone to steal your idea, they actually have to work. So I think you're pretty safe there. That would be my tip for women getting into business or women wanting to grow their business.
I think those are fantastic tips, and I'm so happy you shared them with us. I think we are at the end of our interview, unless Evelyn has another question to ask.
Well, more than a question, I was going to tell Gennike that is very enriching tips that you gave us today. And I actually find interesting how a product can be so malleable for many people when they see it like a different kind of, as you say, it's not a hurdle, it's like what I'm going to do, like to solve, like to do something about it, to go on. And we have a word in physics that it's called, in Spanish is inercia. In English, I think it's inertia.
Inertia. Inertia,
Inertia.
yes.
Inertia. So we should go with the inertia of the things we are doing. So you are right. I agree with what you say, that you should go and do something, not just say, oh, I want to do it, I want to do it, I want to do it, but you are not doing it. So this is great because many times you have great ideas of doing something with sargassum, but sometimes you are afraid to do it because you think you are going to fail, or because you cannot experiment, because you are not a scientist, because you don't feel prepared maybe. But I think your product is another example of people that doesn't need to have a lot of knowledge, just this hunger for learning new things, as you say. And I see that in yourself. So I'm happy to be part of this exposure of your product. And congratulations, really congratulations, and keep going. And I hope when I go to one of the islands to see your product in the Caribbean Airlines.
Thank you, Evelyn. And I hope that you will not just go to one of the islands, but that you'll come to my island. Come to Trinidad and
Yes.
Tobago. It's a little bit
Oh,
far to get to
you.
from Mexico, but there are flights through Panama. They're not advertising, but there are Copa flights through Panama. It's fairly easy to get down to Trinidad and Tobago. And yeah, I hope that as the first company making sargassum based products here, that we will actually inspire others to get on board, because there's so many different uses for sargassum, and the research is publicly available. You just literally do a Google search for sargassum, and there's so many different resources that come up online. That's how I found this podcast. I was just researching on sargassum, and I said, oh, the sargassum podcast, like how cool is that? Somebody actually is doing a sargassum podcast. And so I think, yeah, it just, it takes that curiosity, wanting to learn. And once you have a teachable spirit, you can learn. Again, I'm not a scientist. Thankfully, my girlfriend and my business partner, she has been making cosmetics. Incidentally, her day job, as we say, she's an auditor by training. That's her profession. She does the cosmetics at nights on the weekend. That's her passion project. So thankfully, she knows what she's doing in terms of formulating the products. But I don't have those skills. I'm literally the brain or the mouthpiece.
Well, I think that you are the public face. That's why you are here. And
Thank
you
you.
have that you have that personality to do so. So congratulations to both, and also to other of your partner that couldn't be here. But
Thank you.
yes, And I will. If you tell me that to go to your island, I will. Tobago. Tell.
Evelyn actually has been to Trinidad already on her way to
Yes,
St. Vincent,
Excellent. So
but just for
and I
right,
Tobago.
so
wanted
you
to,
make a
and
longer
I wanted to
layover. You make a
stay.
longer layover to Tobago. Well, que sea bienvenida.
Oh, muy bien, me gusta que sea en español. Podemos terminar en español, porque todas hablamos
No hay ningún
español.
problema. Tenemos muchos venezolanos aquí. Vas a escuchar español en la calle, caminando.
Ah, qué bien. Me encanta, me encanta. Muy bien.
Pues estamos aquí para darle
Genica,
la bienvenida. And Francisca, you too. You're more than
sí,
welcome to come
mucho
visit when
gusto.
next time you're heading out to St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Of course.
Tobago is not that far away.
My colleague, my work colleague, she is from Trinidad and she goes to Tobago a lot because her family is
Excellent.
there. So I definitely have to come visit. I
Now,
have
right now you
multiple
have more
people
than one
now to
reason to come
visit.
by, so we'd be happy to welcome you here.
Great.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Gennike, for this amazing conversation and for all your wisdom and all your tips. I'm super happy you were one of our guests, and I hope you have a really good day. And
Yes, Jenny.
yeah.
Thank you, and congratulations to you. Continued success with your podcast. It is very much needed, and you've been doing a fantastic job of sharing the research about sargassum and what can be done with sargassum. So thanks for the opportunity to chat with both of you.
You're welcome. Thank you to you.
So, Evelyn, what did you think about the interview we just had with Gennike?
Oh, it was great. It was great because I think she's doing something that is not very common, at least here in Mexico. Doing oil and soaps. Maybe they have the idea of doing soaps here in Mexico also, but she is doing also oil, and I find very interesting that she's very, like, she lives with sargassum. She doesn't only makes products, she also tastes sargassum and lives sargassum herself. So I like it very much. Today I think I will have this in my mind. I will be waiting for my sargassum oil to arrive, to rub it on my skin and feel the how it goes. But it was very, very open eyed also to a new way, and she has a great personality to tell us about the product. She was very extrovert to tell things about the product. I like that. Also, she shared with us the process. Sometimes people doesn't want to share us the process, and she did. And how did you find the interview, friend?
I also thought she was super enthusiastic, very well spoken, and yeah, giving us and our listeners lots and lots of great tips on how to get started and how to start a small business with sargassum. I love her story that she came to this through interpretation, through her day job, and that she learned so much about sargassum through interpreting for work, for seminars or conferences that were talking about sargassum. I think this is, I never thought like this could be like a way that
Yeah.
somebody starts a business about sargassum cosmetics, but it's so interesting when we talk to people to hear how did they get started, how did they get first the idea to actually do this. There's so many cool stories we've had in the past, and I think this one is another really cool one to add there.
Yes, the story behind the product. That's great. Yes, I also like that.
Yeah, so Evelyn, I hope you have a really good day. And also to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you tune in for the next one in about 2 weeks again.
Yes, thank you, Fran. You too. Take care.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today and learning with us from our guests. If you want more information about what our guests talked about today, please check our show notes for links and information in our archives. And don't forget to like and share our podcast with your friends.
The Sargassum podcast is made possible through funding by the Resilient Sustainable Energy and Marine Biodiversity Program, RESENBIF, financed under the 11th European Development Fund (EDF) Caribbean Overseas Countries and Territories Regional Program. RESENBIF is being implemented by Expertise France, with the primary stakeholders being the 12 Caribbean overseas countries and territories. The podcast is produced by Paola Diaz, Mario Garcia Rodriguez, Cleo Maridakis, and Eloise Lopez, and it is hosted by Francisca Elmer, Jenna Contuccio, Florence Menes, Cleo Maridakis, Evelyn Salas, and Paola Diaz. We will be back in 2 weeks with another exciting guest. The music of the podcast is from the song Them I Pray by Drizzle, the Road Runner, an artist from Roatan. Follow him on Spotify or YouTube for more music.